Bedford Institute of Oceanography, which we call BIO, was developed around 1962. And it's a multidisciplinary oceanography research institute that we have around 700 people from DFO in this building, as well as 150 people from other departments within the federal family. And there's a range of functions that are performed here at BIO, from fisheries management and oceans protection to science, to communications and policy development, but all in support of an industry that's worth over $1 billion just in Nova Scotia, the commercial fishery.
What are you monitoring here?
The Atlantic Zonal Monitoring Program and the Off-Shelf program, which I'm part of. So essentially, we're looking at temperature, salinity, oxygen, chlorophyll. We're measuring basic parameter over and over and over again. So that way we're able to build trends. So if you measure it just one time, you don't have a real idea what that means on the long-term trends. It's climate. It's essentially ocean climate in a way.
So what is this that we're looking at here?
That's the core instrument, let's say, of any oceanographic program. So we call it CTD Rosette. So the way it's rigged now, there's only 4 bottles, but usually there's 24 of them around the package, and there's lots of instrumentation inside. So all the sensors, like I was saying, temperature, salinity. So it goes down and up all the way down to the bottom, and typically these bottles, when we launch them, they are open at both sides. And so when we are at a certain depth that we want to capture some water, we can send a command and to close the bottle. So then we have a sample of the water at, let's say, 3,000 meters. And from that, we can use the water inside to redo measurements and make sure that the sensors are correct.
So right now we're in the Bedford Institute of Oceanography in kind of the main visitor entrance around some of the species at risk displays, which is what I work on.
What do you do?
Yeah, so we work broadly on the protection of species that are protected under the Species at Risk Act. So we're trying to prevent species from becoming endangered or recover species from that state, and so we work on freshwater species, marine species, and then species that go in between freshwater and marine. So it's pretty diverse what we work on.
And what's this in behind me here?
So this is a leatherback sea turtle. Well, there's actually 4 turtles, 4 of the turtles that you could find in Atlantic Canadian waters. So there's the Kempt Ridley sea turtle, green sea turtle, loggerhead sea turtle, and then a leatherback sea turtle. And this is typical size of an adult female that you might find in our waters as well. The other 3 are juveniles, which is what we usually see, and then for leatherback we see adults as well. So this is actually a cast of a real sea turtle. And so this was a sea turtle that was found by DFO doing turtle research in 2016. And she was actually entangled in fishing gear. So they brought her carcass to the Atlantic Veterinary College at UPEI. And then 2 local artists used like a mold of the carcass to create this beautiful installation here, which was Doug Morse and David Coldwell. And it's been here since 2017. And you can actually see on her body there's still some of the marks of the entanglement in fishing gear, which is the main threat to leatherbacks in Canadian water.
So these monitoring program runs since, in the case of the Labrador Sea, it runs since the 1990s. Mm-hmm. And the AZMP, the Scotian Shelf Program, starts in 1998. It's basically a kind of an answer when the codfish crashed. One of the main answers was, what happened? How can we understand, do we have the data to understand what really happened and where it will go? And the answer was no. We don't have the data to answer these questions. So all the monitoring programs became some sort of a way to build the knowledge and helping us to be able to answer that kind of questions. So which bring us to the North Atlantic whale. One of the first questions was, okay, where the food is. So do we have an idea where they can go feeding? And we had a baseline data for the Gulf of St. Lawrence and for the Scotian Shelf to document what was really happening food-wise. So and we had enough data to build up some modeling effort to try to steer us up towards meaningful solution for the whales.
So what are some of these species that you work on?
So there's sea turtles, leatherback and loggerhead are both listed as endangered. There's white shark, also known as great white shark, which is endangered. We have mollusks, so there's the Atlantic mudpiddick. There's Atlantic salmon that we work on, and then on the freshwater side, there's species like whitefish or Lake Utopia rainbow smelt, so it's very diverse, from big to small. There's whales as well. Right whale is another endangered species that people will probably know of.
Now, I don't hear much about these leatherback turtles. I didn't even know they were here.
Yeah, they don't actually come on shore in Canadian waters, so in southern latitudes they're nesting, so people might be more familiar with them because they use the beaches to nest, but they're really only here to feed in Canadian waters, so they're more offshore, so your average boater wouldn't necessarily overlap with them.
Something as beautiful as this sea turtle, this leatherback turtle, what kind of threats does it face?
So the main threats to leatherback sea turtles in Canadian waters is lines, like fishing lines in the water or any other floating debris that it can get entangled in. That's in Canada, and then in the southern latitudes where it is nesting, it's threatened by activities that could harm its nesting habitat, so coastal development or poaching or artificial light in the area. So there's a lot of threats to leatherback as it carries out its life cycle.
I drove over the bridge for 20 years looking down at this facility, not completely understanding. I saw, of course, the Coast Guard vessels, but there's so much more. There is absolutely, it is a functioning wharf where we have Coast Guard vessels berthed here. They receive maintenance work and service work. It is a home port for the Coast Guard's Atlantic Fleet.
You are in the Canadian Coast Guard Integrated Technical Services Marine Engineering Boat Repair Shop.
What kind of work goes on in this place?
We take care and maintain all the small rescue craft, emergency response vessels. We support large fleet, small fleet, all the SAR stations for Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and PEI. Typically, we see the boats once a year for real good inspections, and we will go through the boats, the trailers, mechanically, electrically, safety support systems such as rollover systems. We will do certifications, annual inspections of them.
So you're in the business of saving lives here?
To an extent, yeah. We are definitely, what we do has a profound impact on whether they can do their jobs properly or not. So when we send something out the door, we are trying to send the best product out the door that we can.
What's the most challenging part of doing this kind of work?
Usually it's the time frames. So we're basically 24 hours standby for the Coast Guard. So large fleet, if they have an FRC go down for operation, something mechanically broke on it, we have spares here that we prep and we substitute the boat in for them. So it's some tight time deadlines.
This looks like a really long, thin mosquito net that you'd put over your bed. What actually is this?
crustaceans nets. So we're looking at mesozooplankton. So you're not that far saying mosquitoes. We're looking at zooplankton, things that crawl in the water that are from the mesh size. It's 200 micron. So each hole here is 200 micron, and usually you can. We will catch plankton up to, let's say, a centimeter, 2 centimeter. Larger than that, usually they have a better swimming capability, so they can escape. The one we are studying the most here is, in terms of biomass, it's the most abundant pluricellular organism in the Northern Atlantic. So, and from these copepods, you can do a whale.
What you're telling me is that if you took all the zooplankton and you put them on a scale, that would weigh more than if you took all the whales in the ocean and you put them on a scale.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, it's how the ecosystem is structured. You need more energy at the base of the food web to be able to sustain everybody at the top, right?
So do you drag this behind? Is this a trawling type thing, or do you just lower it down? How do you get them in? Do you bait them?
Yeah. So essentially. For our measurements, to make sure that we are always measuring it the same way, so usually this is tied to a weight, and the cotton that we have here, mm-hmm. that's where everything get caught, right? Okay. But so because it's rigged that way, the cotton is tied to the weight, we can lower the thing. That way, so that way when it goes down, it's not fishing.
Well, I'm primarily responsible for doing all the electrical on the fast recovery crafts.
These are out in salt water. Does that have an impact at all on things?
Yes, it does. Salt water is something that I chase after all the time.
You chase?
Corrosion. As soon as salt water gets into wiring that has DC on it, it turns basically to powder. So I'm constantly chasing the wires to make sure that the ends are good, the connections are good, there's no saltwater ingression into the systems at all, because it just destroys things. If this was a freshwater environment, my job would be very easy, but it's not. So it has a lot of impact, especially if one of these vessels flip over in saltwater. Then my job is to basically gut the entire system and put it all back in again.
If they flip over, it sounds like this is something that's happened before.
Yes, it does happen. Some of the vessels can get into a situation where they're actually coming close to another vessel, and they can get into a wake, which can actually flip the boat over. These can run in a pretty big sea state before they actually get flipped over by just driving them.
Because if they flip over, how do you get them back up? You got to take them out of the water?
No. There is a system on these vessels that have either CO2 or air compressed, and on the aft side of the vessel there's a handle, and you break the contact on that handle, pull it, and there is a righting bag. It actually inflates and it flips the boat back over by itself.
Okay, so just air powered.
That's right.
1, 2, 3.
That all happens underneath the water, and then the boat flips itself back over. So that happens under a minute.
And that bag is enough to tip this thing right back over.
Yes, sir.
There's a lot of not just sea turtles, but we've got some dangling sharks here as well.
Yeah, we have a shark display, so there's actually over 20 species of sharks in Atlantic Canadian waters, which not everybody might realize because you don't see them every day. But one of the biggest sharks, and one that we have on display here, is the white shark, which is also known as the great white shark. And the model that we have here is built by Doug Morse, who's a local artist, and it's actually to scale, so it's the same proportions and dimensions of the size of a white shark that we might find in Canadian waters as well. And white sharks grow pretty slowly and they live to be quite old. So this one is actually about 16 to 18 years old if you found it in the wild. One of this size and would weigh about 700 pounds.
Are these great white sharks a danger to Nova Scotians?
Yeah, I feel like in popular media we often think of the scare factor of sharks and how they might impact us, but it's important to note that for sharks globally, and including for white shark, the greatest threat to sharks are actually humans. So we cause a lot more damage to sharks than shark populations than they do to humans. It's good to be aware if you're in an area where there might be sharks in Canada or elsewhere, but yeah, really, they should fear us more.
They should be more afraid of us than us of them.
Yeah, exactly.
We have one of the largest green facilities in the Halifax area. We work with Nova Scotia Power, and we have arrays of solar panels that provide green energy into the Nova Scotia Power grid. We have geothermal heating and cooling. We are becoming more and more green as a facility, and this aligns with the Government of Canada's greening policy. So, and it's also contributing to Nova Scotia Power and achieving some of its climate objectives as well.
We're at the Energy Centre. This is BIO's heating and cooling plant using seawater. So we've been using it for 20 years for air conditioning. It's how we cooled all of BIO, about 9 major connected buildings. So we have intake lines behind you here, about half a kilometer out into the Bedford Basin and about 30 meters down. And we pump cold seawater all summer. And we use that to run that through some titanium plate frame heat exchangers behind me here. And we make chill water that does all air conditioning. And then, so we just upgraded it to sort of our greening government priorities. We're trying to use less fossil fuels. We're trying to electrify our heating. So we just upgraded to a heating plant. So we still now just run it in the winter, and we use that those intake lines as a heat source. It's basically like a big geothermal heat pump plant.
You're talking about greening initiatives here at BIO, and that this is part of it. What other stuff are you doing to green up BIO?
Yeah, we're doing a lot actually. This is the biggest site for DFO, and almost half of the greenhouse gas emissions from operating buildings occurs at BIO for DFO nationally. So energy efficiency, we've done upgrades to the lab to try to be more energy efficient. We've done lighting upgrades, LED lighting everywhere. And then this is a big plant, big project for us, is trying to have this electric source of heating as opposed to the natural gas boilers. And then kind of on top of that, we've got our on-site renewable energy. So we've got 400 kilowatts of solar on the roofs of BIO right now. We're one of the largest in Nova Scotia. And we've got plans to put a couple hundred more on future projects.
Does that solar power all of BIO?
This is a huge facility, so no, it doesn't. But it powers a good percentage of the buildings. We have massive loads here between the buildings and also the Coast Guard fleet, which each one of those is essentially its own little building. So no, it's not 100%, but we get a good percentage on a good sunny day like today.
When you're on the ship, are they moving?
They are.
The sea is moving.
The sea is moving.
The crustacean's moving.
The crustacean's moving. And actually, when I'm working with them at sea, what I'm after, it's how many eggs they are producing. It measures from here to here, it's about 3 millimeters in size. So the eggs are about 300 micrometers, so much smaller.
So you must zoom in much more for them?
Yeah, and the other aspect of speed is if you look at these organisms, the speed they are moving, the speed they can escape. They can move up to 3 times their body length a second. So if you put that in our world, you're at a stop in your car at a red light, turns green, 1 second later, you're on the other side of the street.
So they move like a Bugatti Veyron, is what you're telling me. They're powerful and fast.
Exactly. Actually, someone compared that to an F-15, and they're accelerating faster than an F-15.
Tell me about this building.
Yeah, this has been around here for about 20 years, and yeah, it's definitely a really nice building for mechanical room. We got a lot of natural light. We got a green roof above us. It won an architecture award, the Lieutenant Governor's architecture award when it was built. So it's a really great space to work out of.
What are you working on now?
Yeah, so energy efficiency has been a big one. We've done a lot of these solar and these seawater heating projects. But it's not just that. We take care of office renovations, we upgrade jetties, we work on lighthouses. So we got a really cool portfolio, and we get to do a lot of really cool projects.
So what do you do with these species at risk? How do you deal with this?
So within the Species at Risk program, there's a number of different steps that a species will go to while we're working on recovery for them. So first they have to be listed under the Act, so formally protected as a species. So we oversee that process and the consultation with the public to inform the listing of a species and the protection of a species. And then once they're protected under the Act, we develop recovery documents which lay out the foundation of what the species will need to get itself to its recovery goals. And then we work to implement those. So we definitely don't do that on our own. We work with partners within DFO Science, and other partners, and we work with community groups, NGOs, broadly, other partners as well, to help foster recovery for these species.
Now, you talked about less charismatic ones. You said something about something in the Minas Basin of it almost sounded like a mudfish or like
Yeah, that's a species that I work on, and it's the Atlantic mudpiddick. So it's a small mollusk, so it's like a little clam. It's about this big, and within all of Canada, it only has 2 square kilometers of suitable habitat.
Where are they? You said it's only 2 square kilometers.
Yeah, within the Minas Basin, there's 2 square kilometers, and the largest area of habitat is actually fairly accessible to the public. It's located at Burncoat Head, so you can access the general area via Burncoat Head Park. Which is unusual because most of our species at risk, like the leatherbacks and the sharks, are more offshore and you wouldn't overlap with them. But if you go to Burncoat Head Park, there's interpretive opportunities there to learn about the Atlantic mudpiddick, and they actually ask that visitors stay out of the key habitat areas for mudpiddick, and so it's a way that you can really see your actions having an impact on protecting species. And you can see them there burrowed in the sand.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, neat.
The functions that we perform here support hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, both within Canada but also internationally. I mean, the work that we do in terms of stock management, stock protection, and oceans protection benefits the world. Canada has one of the largest economic zones in the world. Especially in the marine environment. And I think that what we do impacts the rest of the world. It impacts stock availability throughout the North Atlantic. So very, very proud of that function that we do, and knowing that what we do contributes to both Canadians as well as the global population.